All right, real quick. So this one is the technical and fundamental takes on the Magnificent Seven stocks. Let's see what they got to say over here. This was posted about an hour ago as well.
That we're seeing when it comes to NVIDIA and Apple, the momentum trade, has it stalled out or is something else happening? What's your take?
I'll start with NVIDIA. The reality is that in the first 10 weeks of this year, they're up over a staggering 81%. And then on Friday, they were down 5%. And so, the math on that is still pretty darn good. I like NVIDIA. I think it's overbought. I think it's overpriced, but I like it. It's a solid company. And just because it has some of that meme stock velocity doesn't mean that it's actually a company that doesn't have the fundamentals. It's real tech. They have real leadership. And I think that even if some of those bigger funds that have bought in over the last year and a half are locking in their gains, there's still a ton of retail investors who are excited to get into the market, and it's still a good company.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about the fundamentals in a minute. Craig, I'm going to come over to you. I want to get the technical take of what we're seeing. In your mind, when it comes to the momentum trade, the action that we saw on Friday, did that change the narrative when it came to the momentum mega cap tech trade?
Frank, I think it's starting to change. I was just looking at the price action. It was a big outside day on NVIDIA last week. And then if you look at the long-term chart, Frank, this is your classic definition of a parabolic chart, meaning that it's pretty much just going straight up. The stock is up over 679% since the October 22 lows and over 400% if you look at it from the October 23 lows, Frank. And at this point in time, it's 5 and change percent of the overall index, but it's gone parabolic. People are going to have to do some rebalancing. And as that action happens, you can certainly lose some of the momentum. I think it's a great company, but it's sort of a dangerous stock to be jumping into after moves this large in such a short period of time, Frank.
All right, so you say it's a dangerous stock to jump into, but in your mind, from a technical perspective, how important is it for the rally overall? You were citing some of the technical measures in your notes to us, that there's an area of resistance at the all-time high right now. There was a time when everybody thought Apple was important for the rally. Now, has that switched over to NVIDIA? Can we break past that resistance without NVIDIA participating in a positive way?
This has kind of been a single stock market, Frank. So I think if NVIDIA is not going to participate, this market is due for a correction. And we've been talking about a 5 to 10% correction in this market. And Frank, if we go back and we just look at that long-term...
I'm gonna be honest, 5 to 10% is probably, it seems legit. Like if you look at, I mean, we're not gonna look at charts, but just like look at how this is all crypto, right? It's at the end of the day, AI and crypto are gonna go hand in hand when it comes to this market right now and this whole bull cycle. I feel like this shit, the scary part here is everything is going up super fast and like almost too fast to be comfortable with, right? Guys, that like button, appreciate you for hanging out.
Chart again, I would just make the observation that you could see NVIDIA correct 30% and still technically be in an uptrend. That's a huge move. I don't think a lot of investors,
that would be a big move,
or institutions or individual investors.
There we go. Look at that right there. There's there's obviously it's not like any type of technical chart, but you can see it's just been going crazy. It kind of plateaued and then it's just boom right up.
Are going to have patience for a 30% correction in a momentum stock.
It's a lot.
And that's where I think it becomes dangerous.
All right, so just for
the faster it goes up, the faster it falls, right?
Clarity for the audience, you say resistance at the all-time high of 51.57. We got to remember that the S&P and the Nasdaq, they briefly hit intraday highs before closing lower, and that was with NVIDIA having a pretty tough day. Sarah, I'm going to come back over to you.
No, Shakespeare, don't short everything. Get out of here. Like DJ says, I hope you lose all your money. I'm kidding. There's plenty of money to be made. I don't think shorting's a good idea right now. I think, man, we can get into that at the end.
Let's talk about the fundamentals of Apple. In your notes to us, you said the weakness in China, it is an issue. It's certainly hitting revenues, but it's not the end-all, be-all. But China's still about 20% of revenue overall. So give us a sense. How can we see Apple move higher without growth in China and just consistent revenue in China?
I think they're going to have to find other markets. The reality is that in China, there's government pressure to not bring your Apple device to work, increasingly both in the private and public sector. And that means that people are getting different devices. And so, I think that is a market that It's not been easy in China for most big tech companies, right? We forget here that Facebook is banned in China and Uber failed there, and Google is basically banned there, and these companies are doing okay without China. You just sort of have to decide: are you going to accept the headwinds there and build elsewhere? And we've seen Tim Cook spend a lot of time in India. I was a little surprised we didn't see any cameos of him at the Risa Abami wedding, but we are seeing him make a real effort there, because in India, they're still in single digit market share penetration. There's a huge, middle class there as well to really lean into. And so I think we're going to see more of that stuff.
All right. So at the same time, you do admit, I mean, NVIDIA's overbought. RSI is well over 70 right now. We're just looking on the CNBC stock screener tool. Does that matter when it comes to this company? I mean, it does matter a lot of times when it comes to stocks, but this one, they just have something that they have a big moat on and everybody needs.
Yeah, I think that, NVIDIA, they are still making chips that people need. Other of their peers in the Magnificent Seven make up, a huge amount of their revenue, double digits of their revenue every year. These are solid customers that aren't going away. I don't think that NVIDIA will have this lead over AI chips forever. There are a lot of competitors catching up, and we're
Real quick, thank you for becoming a member, Mr. Nismo Miner. Let me open the chat. Sorry, I wasn't looking. DJ Mines in the house. Everyone scream CCXD #1 price go up. Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for being a member for a month.
Seeing them
You're
pop
awesome.
up. But at the same time, it's a solid company. And so I don't think that they're going to go away. The question is, how many people who've been buying in at this insane sort of ramp up over the last year were buying into a solid company that wouldn't go away versus something that they hoped would be sort of a forever up and to the right stock. And I think that gap, that perception gap, is going to be really sort of what drives or doesn't drive the stock price over the next year.
All right, Craig, I'm going to give you the last word. Give us the technical look at both NVIDIA and Apple. Based on the technicals, which direction do you see both going?
Well, Frank, I see both of these stocks continuing to correct. And I think that the Mag 7 has become, the Fantastic Four and ultimately the dynamic duo. But right now, in terms of what we see with Apple, we're seeing weakness and relative strength. We're seeing it sort of a shorter term double top. Frank, I see another 5 to 8% downside in Apple over the near term. And then in terms of NVIDIA, it's a parabolic chart. It's really hard to continue to keep buying the stock in here. And if it was just to correct back to the long-term uptrend, Frank, this could be a 30% correction in NVIDIA. And I'm not sure a lot of people want to hear it, but that's just the reality of what the charts look like.